Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another instalment in the Sydney Railroad build. If you're watching last week, you may remember that with the supply problems for the concrete tied track that I needed to use on the main lines for the upper deck, I decided to take a break from track laying and build the last benchwork section that completes the loop on the upper deck. Anyway, this week it's back to track laying. So without further ado, let's just head out to the workshop and lay some track. Yesterday I finished the sub-road bed for the top of the ramp from the lower level. Today's task is to move over to the peninsula and get back to track laying. I may have mentioned in an earlier video that the client and I have decided to go with wood tied track on the main line up here instead of waiting for the concrete ties, because microengineering really doesn't know when they're going to be able to deliver. I only have half a box of Pico Flex track available at the moment, but there's 4 more boxes scheduled for delivery tomorrow. And I've got plenty to get on with. That half a box is enough to get from the top of the helix to this curve, and then I'll be switching to microengineering around the curve. And then I can get the crossovers done and get into the yard, and that will be at least as far as I can get today. I probably won't even get quite that far. First thing to do is to get this area cleaned off, get all the crap moved, and then vacuum up all the debris. So let me do that and get organized, and I'll talk to you again later. Well, that is 6 yards of track and 4 short pieces across the first 2 benchwork sections. That's all Pico because it's on the very broad curve, almost a straight. For the next section, I'm going to start by making 2 special pieces by soldering a piece of Pico track to a piece of microengineering, and then I'm going to come around this curve using the microengineering, which holds its shape better. Also, I've got to replace one piece of the road bed because it's been here so long that it dried out and shrank and didn't work very well across the corner. The other one is fine. Normally I like to get the track on the road bed as soon as possible, but this has been here for several months, which is too long. Anyway, although it's still early, I'm going to go in and get some lunch, and I'll come back, hit it hard again this afternoon. Well, here are the 2 special pieces of track that I've just made. In both cases, I have a piece of Pico Flex track through the easement, soldered to a piece of microengineering flex track on the circular curve. And in both cases, I do the soldering on the straight and then bend it. That way I can be assured of avoiding the kink. I can't get them installed just yet because I need to get some more turnouts out here. I've got the 2 custom ones I built for the inside. I need the 2 standard curved turnouts for the outside. I'm not even quite sure what radius they are yet. So I'm just going to go inside, look on the plan, and get the turnouts I need. And I'll be straight back out. Well, that is the first half of the curve and the first crossover, all pieced together properly. The crossover is soldered together along with the short piece of track at the rear, all as one sub-assembly. Next thing I've got to do is take it out, put the feeders on, solder the feeders to it, and then glue it in place. I think I'm going to start with the outer track because that is the one that has to lead up to the throw bar on the crossover. The other one, there is slightly more leeway of alignment. So let me just turn the camera off, get to work, and I'll talk to you again later. Well, that corner and that crossover is now properly installed. I'm just going to leave those weights to do their job. I'm going to go inside, take a short break, because I want to be able to do the next crossover without disturbing that one. Well, I thought I had the next 2 crossovers prepped and ready to go in. Unfortunately, with it set up the way it is, the switch machine would be right over a joist. And it's a special joist as well, because it has the cantilever bracket. So it can't go there, What I'm going to have to do is shorten this crossover slightly, overlap these turnouts a little bit more, so that the switch machine gets moved a couple of inches that way, and then it will work. This crossover was longer than it needed to be anyway. I don't really have time to make those modifications today. It's almost 6 o'clock and Zeus needs his food, so I'm going to leave that for tomorrow, and I'll see you then. Well, so far this morning I have installed 3 more turnouts and 1 piece of plain track around the curve between the 2 crossovers. I've also been super elevating everything as I go. Normally I would leave the super elevation until I'm ready to ballast the track, but with the crossover here requiring that the inside turnouts are super elevated anyway, I don't want to end up with wobbly track which might not give a very good test run. So as I say, I've put the shims in all the way around. I start off with 2 or 3 pieces of 20 thou and then 40 thou through the easement, and then by the time I get into the circular curve I'm at 60 thou styrene. Well, that is 2 more turnouts installed, and they seem to be getting more complicated each one I put in. Seems that every one needs a different combination of feeder colours, and those 2 together used a total of 8 different colours of wire. Well, I stopped working in this direction for a while. I decided to go back and do the yard lead all the way around to the end. That way that is now all the code 83 track done in that area. It changes to code 70 halfway across this crossover onto the number 2 lead. I'm going to take a short break, let the weights do their job, and then I can recycle them, and I'm going to continue coming out of this curve. And then it'll be pretty straightforward along the straight, if you'll excuse the pun. Well, I have one of the main lines extended through the curve and the first yard on the straight. Next I need to work on this front turnout, but that's going to need quite a lot more shimming, and I don't have enough shims out here. So I'm going to bring out another bunch tomorrow. It's time to go in now anyway. So I'm just going to wind this up today and continue tomorrow morning. Well, I have already removed all the weights this morning. So there is the track coming up out of the top of the helix around this end curve with all the super elevation. I need to share something that's really cool. Today is 4th of July, and the first piece of track that I'm going to install has 3 feeders, a red, a white and a blue. So I thought that was kind of cool. It wasn't planned, it was just purely by chance. Anyway, let me get that piece of track installed and I'll talk to you again later. Well, I think that's enough for this morning. I've finished this curve. I've got this dummy track in at the end, and I've gone about 10 feet down the straight on the front 3 tracks. I'm not doing the next 2, even though those are also code 83, because I don't have any black feeder wire in stock at the moment. I'm waiting for a delivery, but I've got plenty of wire to do the front 3 tracks. I'm going to go and get some lunch now, and I'll come back out and continue this afternoon. Well, I didn't get back out here after lunch until after 2 o'clock, but if I've calculated correctly, that's another 16 pieces of track laid. I have now reached the end of the straight, and I have just started around the curve at the far end. That's all I'm going to do for now. I'm going to let those weights do their job. I might come out again this evening, probably not though. Probably going to leave it there for today and start back up again on Monday. Well, yesterday afternoon I managed to get the front 3 tracks done all the way down the straight. This morning I started off by prepping 5 left-hand number 10 turnouts to make this series of crossovers. It gets the passenger loop back out onto the main line and also connects the 2 main lines. I haven't drilled the holes for the switch machines yet or installed feeders. That will be the next step, and once I've done that I can get them glued down. So I'm going to turn the camera off, get back to work, and I'll talk to you again later. Well, I now have this series of number 10 crossovers installed, and it seems to have taken me an age to get it done. I'm having supply trouble with my wire. The company that I normally order it from is completely out of most of the colours I need. And although I was able to get 3 of the 4 colours that I ran out of yesterday at my local auto parts store, they didn't have any brown. They were able to order it, and it got there this morning, but by the time I arrived in town, a train had derailed on a grade crossing, blocking every single road through town and completely cutting the town in half. I didn't have a GPS or a map with me, so it took me quite a while to find my way around it. Anyway, I have it now. I have 100 foot of brown wire, which is the colour that I was struggling to get. And then when I got home, I found 2 offcuts of brown wire that would have been long enough to finish the job. Isn't that always the way? So I guess I should have looked first. Anyway, it should go a lot quicker now. I've got a couple more legs of plain track to install in behind the crossovers, and then I can start on the curve. I can't get very far into the curve because there is a crossover in here that requires at least 1 custom turnout that I haven't built yet. But I can get a little bit further before I need to build that, and I'll get that done this evening when I go inside. Anyway, I'm going to turn the camera off now, get back to work. I think that's enough waffling for one installment. So I'm going to carry on and talk to you again later. Well, it seems to have taken forever, but I now have the next 5 turnouts ready to install. One of the reasons for taking so long is that I needed to build 3 custom curved turnouts, and I no longer had the full-size track template to put them on, so I had to print it out on 10 sheets of regular size paper. But that's all been done. I've now got all the holes drilled for the switch machines. I've got all the feeders on, although you can't see them because I've reinstalled everything just to test fit it one final time. There's not going to be as much super elevation on this curve as I put on the one at the other end. I don't think it's really necessary. Being so far back in the scene and viewed only from the inside, it's not going to be obvious that it's a bit flat. The only time you'll ever notice the lack of super elevation is with a camera car. And it does make it a whole lot easier with the levels. So I'm going to have the smallest amount starting about here, and then I'll just super elevate the end curve. Anyway, I think what I'm going to do is duck underneath and install those 4 turnouts, these 2 crossovers, from inside the access hole. Then once I've got those adjusted right, I'll come back and do the straight one from where I am now. Anyway, I'm just going to turn the camera off, get back to work, and I'll talk to you again later. Well, that is those 5 turnouts installed. It went quickly once I got them organised. I've also prepped the one at the back, although that's not glued down yet. I'm going to leave that until I've got the piece of track in between those 2 turnouts in front of the camera now. That will make it a lot easier to adjust it. Anyway, the next thing to do is to work on filling in these 2 gaps back to where I worked on yesterday. So let me just turn the camera off, get back to work, and I'll talk to you again later. Well, I've now got the 2 main lines extended through the junction to the end of the power district. I haven't even worked out what colour wires I need to continue with from that point, but you can see the twin copperhead ties at the end, which marks the electrical gap, and that's where the signals will be. I think that's about all I'm going to do today. It's almost 6 o'clock. I'm going to go in, get Zeus fed, and I'll be back out tomorrow. So stay tuned, and I'll see you then. Well, the first thing I did this morning was to put in the yard lead all the way around the outside of the end curve. I extended it a couple of feet. The original plans called for it to stop just about where the end of the foam roadbed is on the main line. But by curving it slightly the other way, I can parallel the abandoned line. It'll just disappear into the trees and maybe look as though it once used to join up. I've also got the industrial spur in at the back, That one is code 55. Everything else I'm doing today is code 83. Then I got one more turnout in for the second AD track. I'm just going to work my way back down through the AD tracks. I'll see how far I get. I don't expect to finish them today. I don't have enough rail joiners. I do have some more on order, but they haven't arrived yet, and they probably won't be here till next week. But not to worry, I've got plenty I can get on with. Well, that is the two AD tracks installed all the way to the first benchwork joint. I'm going to just leave that for the glue to set, go in, have some lunch, see how my guild is doing in area of conquest, and I will come back out after lunch. Well, that's my rail joiners used up. It's entirely possible that they've arrived in the mail today, so I may as well check. I don't think so. More than likely it'll be at the beginning of next week. So I'm going to walk down to the mailbox, and if they're not there, then that's all the track laying I'm going to do today. I've still got lots I can get on with though. Well, that's all for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed the show, found it useful or interesting, or both. And I hope to see you back next week, where I will install the turntable, the roundhouse floor, and lay all the track in the engine terminal. Actually, I've already edited and uploaded that video. I did that before I realized that I hadn't finished this one. So hopefully I remember to put them in the right order in the playlist. Anyway, as I said just now, that's all for this week. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.